Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well tonight. I see something about mankinis. Stop talking about mankinis. They're a crime against humanity. So let's see who's on the stream tonight. We have Raven 1983 Witch. Great to see you. Good evening. We have Pete. Great to see you. Pete Robbins. Killer. Great to have you on moderating once again. We have Chatty Rat. Great to see you, Chatty. Arl, thanks so much for coming on. We have Adam Lee. Great to see you. Katrina. Great to see you. We also have Gene T, great to have you on, Gene T. Michael, great to see you. Saul Goodman, great to have you on. Yo, what's up? Audrey, great to have you on. Hope you're well today. We have, let me see. I have to go down a bit. Kevin, great to see you, Kevin. We also have CGM, great to see you. Hope you're well. Daryl, great to see you. Daryl the Snowman. We also have Roseanne, great to see you, Roseanne. Well, we're up to 175, so I have to go right down to the bottom, unfortunately. Malcolm, I see the Vicar, great to see you. Maria, great to have you on. We also have Colin, Jacob, Night Raven, great to see you. And so many more. I have to go all the way down to the bottom. So I hope everyone is very well tonight, Friday evening. You all ready for the weekend? So we're going to talk about a number of different things, of course, as usual. You can hit me with a super chat and I'll read it out during the stream. But we're going to talk about Brexit, talk about the rising cost of living. But I want to start off with this story that sort of went viral yesterday, I think it was. It says here, Molly May, who I had never heard of until this story came out. It says here, yesterday, millionaire influencer Molly May Hugh, her name was trending on Twitter. This wasn't because of a Pretty Little Thing competition she may have been promoting. Instead, the Love Island. Okay, I've never actually watched Love Island. I don't plan to either. I just don't understand these things. Anyway, the Love Island star came under fire for her comments on success, wealth, and background during an interview on Stephen Bartlett's podcast, Diary of a CEO. So this is what she said. Let's hear what she had to say, and then I'll tell you what I think.
It's just believing in that Beyonce has the same 24 hours in a day that we do. And I just think, like, it's literally, you're given one life and it's down to you what you do with it. Like, you can literally go in any direction. And when I spoke...
You can literally go in any direction. Well, it depends on where you come from. Because some people are born into poverty. Some people get out of it. But the majority of people do not. Too much plastic. She's 22 years old, okay, and she's talking about how you can find your dreams or whatever.
Spoken about that before in the past. I have been slammed a little bit with people saying, you know, like, it's easy for you to say that, you know, you've not grown up in poverty, you've not grown up, you know, with major money struggles. So for you to sit there and say that we all have the same 24 hours in a day is not correct. And I'm like, but technically what I'm saying is correct. We do. So I understand that obviously we all have different backgrounds and we're all raised in different ways and we do have different financial situations. But I think if you want something enough, you can achieve it. And
so if you're homeless and you just want a house enough, you can achieve it. Now, there are some success stories, but they are normally broadcast on the front page of newspapers because they're exceptions, not because it's normal. A non-biodegradable package of influencer.
It just depends to what lengths you want to go to get where you want to be in the future. And I'll go to any lengths. Like, I've worked my absolute arse off to get where I am now.
I've worked my absolute arse off to get where I am now. She's 22 years old. I don't know what she does. She's an influencer and she's been on Love Island. Okay, when she talks about working her ass off, well, here's a clip from these. Once again, I'm not very familiar with this person, but I thought it was important to talk about this. Just complete and utter disconnect. I don't know her background. I don't know. I presumed that she she inherited this amount of money. I don't think she started off with nothing and became famous this way. These people generally come from money, and connections. It's not just money, but it's also connections. If you're connected to the right people, you can be successful. If you have money, you can be successful. If you have both of those things, you're going to be very successful. If you have neither, you're going to have to struggle. But here she is in a warehouse where she's shocked with the idea of working 12 hours a day. Now, of course, remember, she's not going to work 12 hours a day. And even if she did work 12 hours one day, she'd go back to her life of luxury.
I'm starting my 2 till 10 shift about 1.
Right, no worries.
I'm on the 2 till 10, but it's actually what time is it now? Right, it's 1:45. So I'm doing the 1 till, what would it be, 1 till what?
1 till 1.
1 till 1? Yeah. Oh, 12 hours?
Yeah.
I'll be on the floor like this by 1 a.m. Jesus, right, okay. So I spend loads of time faffing around doing stuff like this, do you know what I mean? Like, just faffing around.
This thing that they're going to put on her wrist is to make sure that she goes around and she does her job. Of course, I think she's either the owner of this company or a senior member of this company, so obviously she's not going to do the work.
Right, she's getting the job done.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Spot on, and then your finger through this one.
Needs more fake tan, to be honest. It's not what you know, it's who you know, Max. Yes. When God has blessed you with beauty, generally the brains don't follow. Perfect example of white privilege. So young, she'll not have much experience. When I was 22, I was struggling, couldn't even fill up the Range Rover. Things were so tight. Never heard of Molly May. She looks like a petrified mannequin. Work 12 whole hours? Yes, obviously she won't work the 12 hours. She'll be there, for the cameras. She'll be filmed wandering around a bit, and then at lunchtime you'll be like, okay, I've had enough of this. I'm back. Get me out of here. And she'll be gotten out of there. But the rest of the workers who are doing the 12-hour shifts cannot leave. And it's turned out that, where is it? It seems that it says here, her views are even more infuriating when you consider her job as creative director of fast fashion brand Pretty Little Thing. In June 2020, an investigation by the Sunday Times found a factory in Leicester produced clothing for Pretty Little Thing's parent company, Boohoo, was paying its workers just £3.50 an hour. The UK living wage for people aged 25 and over is £8.72. In its response, Boohoo said the conditions of the factory, Jaswell Fashions, were totally unacceptable and fall woefully short of the standards acceptable in our workplace. Isn't it strange that a newspaper had to go in and find that out for the company? Obviously, the company knows these things are happening. The company contracts this work out. They outsource it to the company, and then this company decides to pay its staff £3.50 an hour. There used to be a time where companies would actually own the factories and they would be responsible for their employees. That's all gone out the window. Everything has now been outsourced. So you have one company at the top, just a name. They actually don't produce anything. They contract work out to designers. They contract work out to manufacturers. They produce it at a very low cost. And then it's sold in a store rented by the company. And they don't actually own anything. It's... And then, yes, the fact that they're being paid £3.50 an hour, probably working 12-hour shifts. Would she work for £3.50 an hour? I don't think so. Molly may work for 12 hours or maybe not. It's the latter. No, obviously it was there just for the cameras, and then after 20 minutes she probably said, to hell with this, I'm not doing this. I don't have to do this. I don't need to do this. That's why I'm not going to continue to do it. I presume nobody was prosecuted for this, for paying the staff £3.50 an hour. And this is part of the problem. The company who outsources the work will say, oh, it's not our problem. It's the company who we've outsourced the work to. They are the ones breaking the law, not us. So the buck is passed around. While if it was the principal company, the head company that was hiring people and paying them £3.50 an hour, they could be in trouble. But they're not, because they say it's nothing to do with us. And the law allows them to get away with it, unfortunately. Anyway, let's move on. Just some light stories to start off the night, and then we'll get into the more serious stuff in a moment. You can see here, I just want to share this tweet with you. I'm so bored of the free Jovnik mints. Like everyone, he should have gotten vaccinated, not to play, but to live. Bit of luck, his stint in this hotel will show him what real persecution and discrimination looks like, and inject a bit of sorely needed perspective. So Jovnik, Jokonik, yeah, that's how you pronounce Jokonik, is trapped in a hotel for immigrants full of fleas and horrid food, says mother. So his mother is like, how dare you put my son in this horrible place with immigrants in Australia. So if you don't know, he is not vaccinated. I think he's one of these anti-vaxxers. And he travelled to Australia to play a game of tennis. And I don't know what Djokovic, sorry. Yes, the D not put me off. Djokovic, sorry. Thanks very much, Adrian. He didn't want to get vaccinated, so he travelled to Australia. I don't know what the permissions he was given. Allegedly, it was the local government gave him permission, but the federal government in Australia did not give him permission to travel. And Djokovic, okay, thanks very much. He did not have permission to travel, it seems, and he arrived at the airport and they said, no, you need to be vaccinated to come into Australia. And now he's sitting in a hotel complaining a lot and complaining about the conditions. And even Nigel Farage complained about Australia, imposing restrictions on people coming into the country. The irony of that. Djokovic, thanks very much. Thank you so much, Sheshkovic. Thank you. Yes, I'm terrible with names, unfortunately. Oh my god. All right, let me read some more of your comments. Pronounced by English folk as Djokovic or Djokovic in the US. A woman tennis player got herself deported as well. He claims he is exempt from vaccination and doesn't supply suitable evidence. Is it his exemption is like most people who claim to be exempt because they don't believe in it, or they don't like Bill Gates or something like that. Nigel Farage. The risk is entirely for him, though. Being vaccinated doesn't stop people spreading it. So why the hysteria? It's purely political optics. I don't agree with that, Nick. There are rules. He's supposed to follow the rules like everyone else. He doesn't have diplomatic immunity, and he's not a politician. So I think he wrote Sheshkovic because it was the same as Djokovic. Okay. He had it. Okay. Thanks, Audrey. I didn't know he actually had it. So. Anyway, let's move on. So that's a story that's going to continue for a while. I want to show you this. Before I show you this clip, you can see here. It says, "When your dad meets someone he knows outside the shop, and you just want to go home and go on TikTok." So here is Jeffrey Donaldson complaining about, well, It says here, DUP leader Sir Geoffrey Donaldson says he will have a crunch meeting with Foreign Secretary Liz Truss next week over the controversial Northern Ireland Protocol. So, you know, the Northern Ireland Protocol has not gone away. It's basically done away with Lord Frost. He was defeated by the Northern Ireland Protocol. Liz Truss has taken over from Lord Frost. Will she be able to fix the protocol for the DUP? Because the DUP are very upset about the protocol and the traditional unionist voice, and a few other crazy people like Bin Boy. I do recommend checking out Bin Boy. Jamie Bryce, I think his name is. But I love the expression of this lady. I don't know if it's his wife or his one of the people from the DUP, his assistant. I don't know, but let's hear what Geoffrey Donaldson has to say.
I want to see Stormont continuing to deliver. I want my ministers to continue working, but I am very clear that we need an outcome on the protocol within a very short space of time. I know that people will say, but you said that in December. I've tried to be reasonable. I've given time and space for these negotiations. I've waited to see what happens. I will talk to Liz Truss and see what she has to say. And then we will have to make a judgment as to whether we believe the UK government is going to deliver on the commitment they made to safeguard Northern Ireland's place within the UK internal market or not. And if they're not, then they've dishonoured the agreement which formed the basis on which Stormont was restored. And that is not a sustainable position.
So they expect Liz Truss to do something for them, basically. And look, Liz Truss and Boris Johnson are happy to see raw sewage pumped into rivers and lakes in England. Why does the DUP think that Liz Truss or Boris Johnson give a crap about Northern Ireland and give a crap about the DUP? They don't. They haven't. And Sir Geoffrey Donaldson seems to think that if he continues to push Boris Johnson enough, maybe he'll care. What planet has Geoffrey Donaldson been living on over the last 2.5 years? Boris Johnson does not care about Northern Ireland. Boris Johnson lied to the DUP. Boris Johnson lied to businesses in Northern Ireland. At what stage will he wake up and realise, he's under the bus? Does he have to say, look, this is a strange place I'm in. It looks like I'm under a bus. Yes, and Boris Johnson is driving it. At what stage will he wake up and realise that? The DUP get more airtime than they deserve. I don't give a damn what he wants to see. Asking Truss, you might as well ask Lamppost Geoffrey. The Irish Sea, the sea between Ireland and the west coast of GB must be horrific now. Look, businesses are adapting. Businesses have adapted to the situation post-Brexit. That was, they actually adapted much faster than people had previously thought they would. But the only people who are angry is the DUP. The DUP would like Northern Ireland to suffer in the same way as the rest of the UK is. There aren't the same sort of shortages as there are in Northern Ireland. There aren't the same sort of shortages as there are in England, Scotland or Wales. But Geoffrey Donaldson wants Northern Ireland to be in the same situation. These people, as I said before, I'm not going to go over this again, but as I said before, these people campaigned for Brexit, hoping that it would put a border in the Irish Sea, not on the Irish Sea, on the island of Ireland, and they failed. They bet the farm and lost. And instead of shutting up and going away, they continue to make these threats. Yeah, we're going to bring down the assembly. But I think it's going to backfire. They're not very politically savvy, the DUP. They continue to support the wrong people, and now and now they're likely to see eventually a united Ireland, and they were part of the problem. They were, if you're against a united Ireland, you should be angry with the DUP. Let me see some of your comments. Yes, so flag shaggers can feel important. Love the comments. Perhaps they're after another £1 billion bribe. Maybe that's the case. But see, the problem was when they got the bribe was Theresa May needed them. Boris Johnson doesn't need the DUP. The DUP are, I would say, like dog poop on his shoe. But not even that, because at least you'd acknowledge the existence of dog poo on your shoe. Boris Johnson doesn't even acknowledge the DUP anymore. They're a joke. Don't understand politics. Yes. Anyway, let's move on to Brexit stuff. Sorry, here we go. UK and Irish foreign secretaries meet over Northern Ireland Brexit impasse. So Liz Truss and Simon Coveney meetup comes before talks on protocol with EU Brexit negotiator. Who's the EU Brexit negotiator? There isn't an EU Brexit negotiator. The negotiations are over. But anyway, the UK Foreign Secretary Liz Truss and her Irish counterpart Simon Coveney have had a good and friendly first meeting over the vexed issue of the Brexit arrangements in Northern Ireland, Irish government sources have said. They said that the first time over dinner in London on Thursday night and discussed the Northern Ireland Protocol, the wider relationship with the EU and UN security matters, including the crisis in Ukraine and Kazakhstan. The meeting came less than a month after the Brexit Minister David Frost quit and before a first meeting with the European Commission Vice President responsible for Brexit negotiations, Maroš Šefčovič, at the Foreign Secretary's Grace and Favour home, Chevening. Truss and Coveney had previously met in 2014 when they were both responsible for agriculture, but have not seen each other in person since Truss became Foreign Secretary in the cabinet reshuffle in the autumn. It's in the autumn, it seems even less than that, less time ago than that. An Irish government source said the Minister for Foreign Affairs and the Foreign Secretary have previously worked together in the agricultural brief, so it would be good for the blah blah blah. While the meeting was described as good, UK sources said Truss would not be dropping demands for further compromises from the EU on the Brexit protocol in Northern Ireland. Further compromises? What compromises has the EU issued in respect to what Frost was asking? Frost was asking for the ECJ to go. The ECJ hasn't gone. Frost had threatened to trigger Article 16. He didn't. He threatened to trigger it on a number of occasions. The UK is seeking a radical reduction in trade barriers affecting consumers and businesses amid continuing threats by the DUP party to leave the Stormont Assembly unless the current protocol is torn up. The UK is also maintaining Lord Frost's call for changes to the rules of state aid and governance and dispute resolution, removing the European Court of Justice as the sole arbiter in the events of trade disputes. While Truss has said she wanted a comprehensive solution, many have seen her appointment as a reset moment, with expectations of fresh impetus to be forged at her meeting with Šefčovič next week. I would love to be on a fly on the wall between Liz Truss and Šefčovič, because Liz Truss is not really a very intelligent individual, and we've seen how she has dealt with trade with, for example, New Zealand and Australia, and conceded on everything. So if I was in the DUP and I saw Liz Truss taking over from Lord Frost, I'd be very worried. Farmers in Northern Ireland have also been thrown under the bus because of the trade deals. And some members of the DUP have come out and criticised the UK government over the trade deal that they've signed with Australia, for example. Why some of them think, yes, it's going to be great with Liz Truss, I don't know. Australia has cancelled visa for Czech tennis player. Australian government, a recent infection does not mean a foreign national can travel to the country without being fully vaccinated. What is it with tennis players? What's wrong with them? How many times have they threatened Article 16? It's a farce. Cherry, I don't know. It's probably a dozen times at least. And what's funny about it is the Brexiteers will say, yeah, but the EU triggered Article 16. But they didn't. They were considering it. And then the Irish government got on the phone and says, don't do that. And they didn't. But when Boris Johnson says, yeah, we're going to trigger Article 16, Lord Frost did it, Liz Truss say we're ready to trigger it, that's okay. DC, great to have you on the stream. Hope you're well tonight. Thanks for that super chat. Hello. Do you think 2022 will play out for the Scottish independence movement? I think as I said before, the longer Boris Johnson stays there, the better it is for Scotland, Scottish independence. Johnson is extremely unpopular at the moment, and he's becoming more unpopular by the day. And I think that's helping the Scottish independence movement. So how will 2022 play out? It depends on how long Boris Johnson stays there, and it depends on who replaces him. If Liz Truss replaced him, I think it could actually help Scottish independence, because the Nicola Sturgeon and the independence movement would say, look, Liz Truss is like Boris Johnson, another Brexiteer. Well, if it was somebody a bit more pragmatic, I don't know who, Rishi Sunak, but is he more pragmatic? No, he's another Brexiteer. So I think whoever Johnson is replaced with, it's likely to be another Brexiteer. And Brexit is extremely unpopular in Scotland, and Westminster is unpopular in Scotland. I only see a real threat to independence coming from the Labour Party, actually, because a Labour, and I don't mean a threat to in the sense that it would undo massive amount of support, but some people who may be sitting on the fence would prefer Starmer as Prime Minister, and they may reconsider Scottish independence. But those would be people who'd be sitting on the fence. But the longer Johnson is there, the longer the Tories are there, those people are more likely to, when push comes to shove, vote to leave the Union. So I think 2022 is going to be an interesting year for Scottish independence. Independence for London. Just ignore the DUP. Last gasps of air from a dying party. And you know what? No ventilators available. But Northern Ireland is doing better still in the single market, so the DUP need to go away in the interest of Northern Ireland. Yeah, but Pete, they don't give a crap about the people of Northern Ireland. And Jeffrey Donaldson, I think it was interviewed some years ago, where he said, I don't care about the economic cost of Brexit. It's worth it. Now he's crying crocodile tears about the economic cost of the protocol, although the protocol is protecting Northern Ireland from the worst of Brexit. Thank you very much again, DC. Thank you, Max. Do you think there's a future for Priti Patel in the government when Boris goes? No, I think somebody like her is too toxic to remain. But it depends on who. I don't see her surviving a reshuffle. I think she's there because she's loyal to Boris Johnson. And she keeps a certain section of society angry. But I wouldn't see her surviving a reshuffle. I think if Rishi Sunak became Prime Minister, you would see a completely different cabinet. Liz Truss, a pretty much different cabinet. But I don't see Priti Patel staying on. Now, I could be wrong, but it depends on the type of leader the Conservatives put in charge. If it's somebody quite extreme, then yeah, it's likely that Priti Patel would remain. I don't know if she'd remain as Foreign Secretary, because there are a lot of Brexiteers who are not happy with what she's doing. Of course, she can't break the law. She's trying to break the law, but the law is pushing back against the government for now, hopefully. thankfully I should say, and hopefully it will continue. But I don't see Priti Patel surviving another reshuffle, especially if it's the Prime Minister is replaced. Red Tory, blue Tory, red Tory, two cheeks of the same arse. Yes. If Scotland gained independence, would they become a republic? That's not on the cards. I think they should, but that's not the first goal of the SNP and the Scottish independence movement is to become independent first, and probably maintain the Queen as head of state, or whoever replaces the Queen, William or Charles. But I think maybe down the road they would likely have a referendum on becoming a republic, and I think there's considerable support for that. But it's not the main objective, I think, of the Scottish independence movement. Media will turn it upside down unless the left media will utilise India deal to show how immigration was a lie. The DUP has not opposed more Northern Ireland role in the protocol. No Queen. Though the orange variety are not all bad. Some Lib Dems and are pro-Indy, but seem to be keeping stum for now. Yeah, I think it's a problem for a lot of these parties, like the Labour Party or the Lib Dems, whose headquarters are in Westminster, and it's difficult for them to act somewhat independently because they rely probably on money and support from Westminster. So if they go too beyond the pale, I think they can risk being creating a rift between them and Westminster. So they have to toe the party line. The Queen owns a lot of land in Scotland. Yes, I think that's a big problem for her, and she's not too. This is the thing about the Queen, is that she say like the Tories in a sense. They say they care about the Union, but do they really? Maybe the Queen cares more about the Union than the Tories do, because she has a vested interest in keeping the Union together. Not so much a political reason. There isn't much of a political reason behind it, more an economic one. Hitting people in the pocket really works. So it could be something of a compromise. Say to the Queen, look, if you don't push back against us, we'll maintain you as head of state. But the Queen is no spring chicken, so I don't know, and I'm not sure if it's land that belongs to her personally, or if it's land that belongs to her estate. Probably her estate. I feel Scottish independence should be voted in the spring. I don't see a referendum happening anytime soon, especially with the pandemic at the moment. Anyway, let's move on. Staying with Brexit for a moment, I wanted to show you this story. So it says here, England's farmers to be paid to rewild land. So farmers in England will be given. So in the past, money came from Europe to maintain things like this, to maintain hedgerows, or to encourage farmers not to abuse the land, for example. Common agricultural policy as well, that covered a lot of these things. That's gone, of course, because the UK is no longer a member of the European Union. I'm not a huge fan of the common agricultural policy, the way that it maintains farming in a way that is not economically viable. And there are many different ways to look at this, but let's see what this has to say. Farmers in England will be given taxpayers' cash to rewild their land under plans for large-scale nature recovery projects announced by the government. These will lead to vast tracts of land being nearly managed to conserve species, protect habitats for wildlife, and restore health of rivers and streams. Yeah, I think a good start would be to stop companies, fine companies for pumping raw sewage into these rivers and streams in the first place, but okay. Bids are being invited for 10 to 15 pilot projects, each covering at least 500 hectares and up to 5,000 hectares, to a total of approximately 10,000 hectares in the first 2-year phase, about 10 times the size of Richmond Park in London. These pilots could involve full rewilding or other forms of management that focus on species recovery and wildlife habitats. Rare fauna such as sand lizards, water voles and curlews will be targeted, with the aim of improving the status of about half of the most threatened species in England. This sounds like a good idea. Look, I'm not against spending taxpayer money if it's spent in the right way, and we've seen over the last number of decades how nature has been, let's put it straight, destroyed. And it would be good to try and undo some of that damage. Valerio, thanks so much for that super chat. Hi Max, just arrived in Milan. Happy New Year. Hey Valerio, you're traveling all around Italy. Last time you were in Rome, so hope you're fine over in Milan. Have a great one. Hope you're great to see you again this year. Thanks for that super chat. Have a great evening. The exact fund has not been disclosed, as bids will be considered to determine value for money before a final decision on which should go ahead is made this summer. However, a total amount available for such schemes is expected to reach 700 million to 800 million a year by 2028. By 2042, the government aims to have up to 300,000 hectares of England covered by such landscape recovery projects, an area roughly the size of Lancashire. Wow. It goes on to say, but there is a problem. So it says here, Green campaigners were sceptical over whether the new payments would be enough to meet the government's aim of halting the loss of wild species abundance and managing 30% of land for the good of nature by 2030, as well as ensuring that farmers help to solve the climate crisis rather than add to it. The Wildlife Trusts, RSPB and National Trust charities said details on how the schemes would work is still lacking. And of course, this is usually the problem when it comes to post-Brexit Britain: promises without detail. Craig Bennett, the chief executive of the Wildlife Trust, said the real test of this agricultural transition is not whether it's a little bit better or moderately better than what came before, but whether it will be enough to deliver on the government's targets. Anything less than that means that this historic opportunity will have been wasted. While we're hearing the right noises from government, the devil is in the detail, and the detail is still not published nearly 6 years after the EU referendum. And this has always been the case, promises without detail. And it's rightly said here, it's almost 6 years after the referendum. These were promises made by the Brexiteers back in 2016. Yeah, we need to leave the EU to look after our land. Well, none of these things were stopping you. You could look after the land and the environment while being a member of the European Union. But this is a bit like, I fear this is a bit like the VAT issue on fuel, where Boris Johnson said we need to leave the EU to cut VAT on fuel. Okay, the UK has left. Have you cut VAT on fuel? No, we haven't. Why not? Because we like the amount of money it brings in. And we don't really care about the poor. He's in Canada now, Derek, shooting at bears in woods. Who the hell is that? This Prince William. Okay, yes. I would really support something like this. I think we need to try and protect nature as much as possible. We need to undo some of the damage. And, Britain is a beautiful country that deserves to be respected. And, going forward, we have to live and respect nature. And if we can undo the damage of the last number of decades and centuries, I'd fully support that. Okay, let's... we're about halfway through the stream, so I think we can have a little comedy moment, and then we'll come back in a moment for the serious stuff. Let me read some of your comments before we go. Everyone with eyes ought to be crying right now. Rewilding might cover up the fact that farming isn't viable anymore. Brexit bonus of the year. That could be, yes, it could be a case of, there's no need to grow crops, or there's no need to how can you say grow cattle? No, have cattle because we're importing all the meat from New Zealand or Australia or the United States, as the case may be in the future. So it could be the case that there's no need for farming because everything has been, in a sense, outsourced. But it doesn't seem like something that the Tories would actually do. The Tories would just let things go. They've let everything else go. So I'm skeptical that Boris Johnson's government wants to spend hundreds of millions protecting the environment. It's not their style. Czech Republic have removed VAT on fuel and they are in the EU. No, Katrina, that's impossible. Breed cattle is what you're saying. Yes, thank you so much. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Breed cattle. Yes, Adam Lee, thanks so much, Adam. Raise cattle. What do Germans think of the British after Brexit? Well, I can't answer that. I'd have to ask the Germans. What do any Germans on the stream think of Britain post-Brexit? Hedgehogs in Wales are disappearing at the rate of knots. But at the UK, but the UK was covered in concrete growing markets. It's a reference to what's his name? That gammon on talk radio. Mike Graham, yes, Mike Graham, who claimed that concrete can grow, and then he's been desperately looking for articles about organic concrete, which actually has turned out to be true. But why didn't Mike mention that when he was asked? He could have said, yeah, of course you can grow concrete. There is a type of concrete that, no, but he was looking for things after the fact. Captain Hindsight, actually. No, or not foresight anyway, but he was wrong. And then he tried to prove that he was right. And he found some article to disprove that he was wrong. But he was wrong because he didn't know what the hell he was talking about at the time. Haggis is disappearing in Scotland. Well, that's not a huge loss, is it? So let's enjoy our comedy moment, and I'll be back in a moment as well for our serious stuff. Enjoy.
Britain 2025. A new chapter was ready to be written. With levels of human shit in British waters reaching a 90% mark, families are urged to remain stoic and continue making the most of the now traditional New Year heatwave. Following severe flooding over the Christmas period, property developers seize upon a cheap and readily available building material in the form of the thousands of tons of shit deposited on land, subsequently dried out by the record-breaking January temperatures. As the nation quickly fills up with so-called poo builds, the British Tourist Board unveils its new slogan, Britain, it's hot shit. Workplaces across the country are hit by a new cyber attack that makes 1 in 3 electronic devices explode fatally on startup. Tens of thousands of employees perish and work from home briefly becomes standard again, drawing a stinging backlash from newspaper columnists with commercial property investments. Facing intense pressure from donors, the government incentivises continued workplace activity with 25% off Nando's for those who go into work, revoked citizenship for those who don't, with the Nando's pledge quietly rolled back on. The government's cybersecurity czar Dido Harding blames Russia, leading to gentle ridicule from satirists who point out that Russia hasn't even existed ever since President Joe Biden inadvertently mumbled, confirmed and then reconfirmed the nuclear codes while catching a snooze at the previous year's G7 summit. Harding issues a statement saying, "Sorry, I meant China," which everyone agrees is plausible because you can't trust China, can you? I mean, it's all over the telly and that. Prime Minister Sunak and Deputy Prime Minister Starmer welcome President-elect Kyle Rittenhouse on a state visit by inviting him to the relaunch of London's Nightingale Workhouse, which is officially rebranding as the Nightingale Workhouse and Monster Truck Arena. President-elect Rittenhouse takes his place as guest of honour at a live massacre by demolition derby of convicted climate protesters, the Sun newspaper having enlisted Britain's 20 top fat-ass white girl Range Rover mums as executioners at the wheels. 500 protesters are herded into the arena, with all but 3 of them violently squished. These survivors are then pitted against the much-loved, bioengineered 50-foot monster with the head of Winston Churchill, who makes light work of them amid some crowd-pleasing, wise guy goading. Need a light?
That's insane. Okay. Britain 2025. It's not that far away, okay? So it goes on to say here, UK farmers sceptical after minister urges them to stand ground on fair price. So prices are increasing, the cost of living is going up, and the government are saying, look, don't worry about it, everything's under control. Farmers must stand their ground on price inflation and ensure that the rising costs they face are reflected in the prices paid to them by supermarkets for their produce, the UK's Environment, Food and Rural Affairs Secretary has demanded. George Eustice told the online Oxford Farming Conference on Thursday that rising input costs should result in higher incomes for farmers, but the increasing farm gate prices should not result in food inflation for consumers. Okay, so farmers should be paid more, but the consumers shouldn't have to pay more. So the supermarkets should take a hit. They're not going to do that. They're going to pass. Like, what are you going to do? How are you going to bring in price fixing? Fixed prices, sorry. I don't think that's going to work. We do need producers to stand their ground and take quite a tough position with retailers to ensure that the money that they pay reflects the cost of their production. This is ridiculous, because in another story, I don't have it here, but another story, supermarket Asda, I think it is, has decided to not sell only British beef, but to actually import beef from Ireland and sell that too. So if the farmers say, you must pay us X for our beef, the supermarket will say, no, we're going to buy our beef from somewhere else. But George Eustice told us to stand our ground. I don't care what George Eustice said. George Eustice throwing farmers under the Brexit bus again. He said food prices are rising as a result of international pressures, as the price of farm commodities internationally was linked to energy prices, which have risen strongly as economies have recovered from the coronavirus shock. But he said farmers obtaining more from their produce need not affect consumers, which is ridiculous. He doesn't understand economics. You can have reasonably modest increases in the farm gate prices and significant impact on farm profitability, but that does not result in major changes in consumer inflation, he said. Is this an attempt to undo some of the, throwing people under tractors? Farming leaders reacted skeptically. Producers yield little power against the UK's mighty supermarkets, a handful of which control the vast majority of the food retail market. The problem for farmers having their margins cut to the bone by supermarkets and being threatened with the loss of their contracts for speaking out has been one of the biggest sources of distress to farmers for more than 2 decades. Martin Lyons, UK chair of the Nature-Friendly Farming Network, said it's very difficult for individual farmers to stand their ground against price pressures from retailers who hold all the bargaining power. You're a small farmer. You go to a big supermarket chain and say, look, pay me a decent price. They say, no, we won't. We can find someone else who'll be cheaper than you are. Even organizations, when they come together to try and put pressure on supermarkets to pay more, they don't have the bargaining power. There is a role for the government to play in giving farmers more power within the supply chain, so they are fairly rewarded for food producing a higher environmental standards. Government should intervene to ensure contracts between buyers and sellers are fair. But this is the contrary of Brexit. Smaller government. The Conservatives are not about government telling business what to do. It's about creating problems for business, yes, but not telling business what to do to help consumers. Because who is going to lose out here? The farmer or the consumer? Well, there are more consumers than there are farmers. And the Tories would prefer to avoid the wrath of the consumers than the wrath of the farmers. So, sorry farmers, back under that tractor you go. George Dunn, the chief executive of the Tenant Farmers Association, said there is significant imbalance with the supply chain, with retailers and food service operators able to wield significant power within the supply chain. Down the years, there have been warnings about the sustainability of the cheap food culture to which we have become accustomed, and it seems that we are seeing the fulfillment of those prophecies of doom. However, retailers and food service producers have the means to avoid a catastrophe by allowing their prices to increase. But they will not do that. You don't understand. The businesses, if the farmers come along and say, British farmers come along and say, we want to be paid a fair price, the supermarkets will say, well, we'll just buy it from somewhere else. We'll import it. And that's what they've been doing. Labour accused the government of letting down farmers. Jim McMahon, the Shadow Environment Secretary, said not only is the government neglecting its duty to support British farmers, leaving them exposed to undercutting through inadequate trade deals, ministers now appear to be washing their hands of their responsibility completely. Our rural businesses deserve better, and it's little wonder they're feeling completely let down by the Conservatives' failings. Look, the trade deals are a disaster, but this is what's ironic about all of this is not all farmers, but a lot of farmers voted for Brexit, and this is the consequence. It's going to get worse, and the wrong people are in charge. And I don't know if the Labour Party would be any different here, because this is basic economics. The supermarkets hold all the cards. Now, do you want the government to intervene and pressure the supermarkets to charge more? But then the supermarkets will say, okay, we'll charge more then. It will pay more to the farmers, but then we're going to pass the price on to the consumer. So somebody's going to suffer either way. Is it the farmer or the consumer? The only way the consumer doesn't suffer is if the supermarkets buy from another source. That's how it works. I don't see how... Look, I'm not defending the Conservatives here, but I don't see how Labour can fix this problem. Unless you say we only buy from British farmers. Okay, but then you can't sort of create that. That's, as I said, if they say, yes, you only buy from British farmers, then supermarkets will say, well, we need to maintain our profit levels, then we're going to pass it on to the consumer. So I don't see how this, I don't see how you can get around this problem. We'll definitely be looking at large-scale agribusiness in less than a decade. Large-scale agribusiness won't work here. The fields are too small. Both will suffer. What's likely is that the farmers will get smaller and go out of business, and most of the food will be imported. That's what's going to happen. And supermarkets will compete against each other. Or they will work together and maintain higher profit levels. And if the Tories are in power, the Tories will not intervene, will not bring in legislation, anti-monopoly legislation or antitrust legislation. They will not do that because they're not the type of party that believes in regulation. So they let businesses do whatever the hell they want. Slap the Irish beef with the British sticker. That's probably... that doesn't really fix the problem, though. It doesn't help British farmers doing that, and the consumer thinks that they're buying British when they're not. Wouldn't the consumers react angry if they see no British beef? Look, I think the consumer will buy whatever they can. If you're on a fixed budget, you don't really have the option to be picky. You don't say, look, there are two products in front of me. One is made in Britain, it's more expensive. The other is from I don't know where, it's cheaper. I have bills to pay. I have to send my kids to school. I have to buy something, and I don't have much money, so I'm going to buy the cheaper one. Hopefully in the future, when I have more money, maybe if I'm able to get a better job or something, I'll buy the more expensive. I've done it myself. And unfortunately, you tell yourself these things when times are tough. You compromise, and I think that's what's going to happen. And the supermarkets know this. Better infrastructure for food to consumer, farmers yield. And the problem with all of these things is that they require government intervention. And the Conservative Party don't want to intervene. Look, the last massive investment was the £37 billion to test and trace that went to Dido Harding. And where did it go? Down a freaking black hole. Paying consultants £6,000-7,000 a day. That's what we know about. Where did the rest of it go? The James Webb Telescope cost, I think, $3 billion to produce, to construct, and to send into space. $3 billion, that's all. Or maybe it was a little bit more. Test and trace, $37 billion. We need a strong leader in this country. Exactly. And unfortunately, a lot of these things are intertwined. First past the post guarantees a weak leader. Because the Labour Party are not going to be able to win a massive majority. And they're always looking... And what I mean is a strong leader is the conflict within the Labour Party. A lot of people are not happy with Keir Starmer. A lot of people within the Labour Party would prefer to have the Tories in power than to have Keir Starmer in power. That's the sad thing about it. Okay, let's move on. In regards to the cost of living, we see it here. I think this story perfectly demonstrates the problem, perfectly explains highlights the problem that you have the producers who are being shafted by the supermarkets. And then the supermarkets are going to shaft the consumer if they treat the farmers in a decent way.
For many of us, saying goodbye to 2021 was something to celebrate. But in terms of your bank balance, 2022 has some unwelcome surprises in store.
Terms like inflation, interest rates and wholesale energy prices might all sound a bit like things that someone else needs to worry about, but they could all be about to make our lives that bit more expensive. So here's everything you need to know about your bills this year.
You might have already noticed the price of your shopping has gone up. The cost of food is linked to labour shortages and other problems across the supply chain, partly thanks to the pandemic and partly thanks to Brexit. They're problems which aren't...
Well, Brexit is driving up prices? Surely we can get on the phone to Jacob Rees-Mogg, who promised the prices would go down because of Brexit.
...going away anytime soon.
So it's more important than ever to be able to, shop around and make sure that you're, shopping with the right supermarket, because they all tend to offer loyalty points, which will give you money off of your purchases, but they're not all created equal.
Official figures, which include other costs faced by households, paint a similar picture. For example, in November, petrol rose by over 5% in just a month. And if you want to buy a used car, well, that will cost you over 31% more than it would have done last year.
All those price rises are driving up the overall rate of inflation. It was up 5.1% in the year to November. That might not sound like a lot, but it's the highest it's been in a decade and way above the 2% officials aim to keep it at. And there's likely more bad news to come on that. The Bank of England forecasts inflation will soon surge to 6%. To try and slow it down, the Bank of England has one key tool up its sleeve: raising interest rates. Before Christmas, it announced interest rates were going up from 0.1% to 0.2%.
See, a problem with this is that normally inflation is related to a boom in the economy. So, the economy is doing really well, so inflation is rising. But because of Brexit and the pandemic, it seems to be the opposite is happening. The economy is suffering, but inflation is rising. So with the Bank of England, the central bank raising interest rates, they're using tools that would, cool the economy, but the economy is not booming at the moment. What the hell is going to happen?
To 5%.
So what it means is for really high interest debt, it gets more and more expensive because you owe not just the amount you owe, but you're also having to pay every month to service that debt, and that debt depends on the interest rate that's set.
So potentially bad news for your bills in the short term, especially if you have a mortgage or other borrowings, but it could lead to better news in the future. In theory, those extra costs leads to less disposable income being spent, the economy slowing, and inflation decreasing. In other words, a halt to those rising prices. All well and good, but there's another very significant cost rise on the way.
With winter in full swing, households around the UK are using more energy to keep us warm. That, plus a combination of global forces, means that the wholesale cost of gas is soaring. And sadly, it's only a matter of time before that cost will be passed on to the consumer. In April, the energy price cap, which limits the amount consumers pay, will be adjusted by the regulator Ofgem. As a result, energy bills will probably rise by more than 50% to
50%? This is insane. 50% rise in energy prices.
£2,000 a year for the average family household.
What's happened is you've seen the wholesale price of energy go up, which has meant that smaller suppliers have actually gone bust, some of them. So because there are less suppliers in the market, it means that, again, prices are going up, and they are going up quite substantially. So, it is a really, really critical time.
Here's what else is on the horizon. National insurance tax is going up by 1.25% in April.
Now, you have to be careful because it's going up by 1.25%. But it's actually going up in real terms by 12%.
But workers on the basic minimum wage will receive a boost that month too, as it's set to go up to £9.50 an hour. And while train fares are expected to rise by 3.8% in March, anyone retiring on the full new state pension will see their earnings rise by £290 this year.
There are some reasons to be cheerful, but there's also a lot for families to grapple with. The year's likely to be tough for many.
As I said before, a UBI would sort out a lot of these problems, but the government don't want to go down that road. I just want to cover one other story regarding the cost of living, and then we'll move on to the next story. This is interesting from Sky News once again.
The reason the Chancellor and the government as a whole are under pressure over fuel bills is the size of the price rise that is coming down the track. The price cap is expected to rise by at least 50%, taking the average bill from around £1,300 a year to around £2,000 a year. Now that's going to affect about 60% of families and households in the country who are on the price cap. But it's going to be particularly acute for those on low incomes or in need of support. And I'm very grateful that Gary and Natasha at Waterhouse have joined us here. We're in outside their home in Lincolnshire. And just very quickly, Natasha, you had a medical condition that has set the family back. Just explain what happened.
In 2017, I was diagnosed with a tumour on the spinal cord and subsequently reduced my mobility So I had to give up work, and also my husband, Gary, he gave up work to care for me during the rehabilitation. So therefore we've lost 2 salaries and now, on universal credit, which by the time we've paid our rent and other bills doesn't leave us with an awful lot. So it's going to be very tight.
So
This is a desperate situation to be on universal credit after, having 2 salaries and then this problem and then being both on universal credit. And then with these energy prices, it's going to be very difficult for these people.
Already a struggle, frankly. And Gary, just give us an idea of what your energy bills are currently and the contrast from summer to this winter.
Well, during summer, our bill was between £33 and £36 a month. We've got our first winter bill in and it jumped up to £190. Taking that into perspective, when you've lost the £80 a month universal credit uplift, it's hit us pretty hard.
And how do you go about managing that kind of size of bill and that kind of increase? What choices does it leave you having to make?
I'm having to choose between paying rent, buying food, or paying for the heating. And when we've got priorities such as electricity that's on a meter that we have to pay for, it doesn't give us any manoeuvrability at all.
And Natasha, your condition means you need the warmth, don't you?
I need the warmth for my legs. The way I'd explain it is like if you've got serious arthritis, my legs just lock up if I have not got any warmth. So I need the...
Why are we talking about this in 2021, 2022 even? These people can't heat their house. They have to choose between paying the rent and paying bills, and then if they don't, they have to decide, well, we have to have a roof over our heads, so we have to pay the rent, so we have to cut back on other things, cut back on heating, for example. And this lady has to, suffering from this condition, she needs the heating. Like, what is the response from Boris Johnson's government? Yeah, we're going to give £125 a week. Oh, sorry, not a week, £125 for winter.
I need the heat. So again, it's very tricky to decide between heat or food, really.
You receive the warm home allowance as it is, which is £140 a year.
Yeah.
As this could go up.
The guy said his bill went to £160, £180 in 1 month, and the heating allowance is £130, £140 a year.
Around £10, would that make a difference?
None whatsoever, totally insignificant, unfortunately. I know every bit helps, but it's not going to make any difference to us one iota.
And can I ask just how you feel about the prospect of potentially bills, which have already gone up to record levels, going up 60% from the spring?
It's making me anxious, it's stressful. You just don't know which way we're going to turn.
I know that these people are not working in this moment, but think about it for a moment. If somebody is stressed out because of things like heating bills or paying the rent or whatever, imagine giving them a universal basic income, where here's £1,000 a month, okay, to cover your costs and everything like that. These people would be more productive. You wouldn't have to worry, so you wouldn't be stressed. You wouldn't be freezing cold because you're afraid that you're going to lose the roof over your head. You'd be able to sleep at night, and then you would be more productive in society. And this is a sort of hidden benefit of a UBI, where people, if they're able to operate better, they're more productive. How are they able to operate better? Because they don't have this sword of Damocles over their head on a daily basis.
And have you got a message for government as they say they're listening, they're going to act on this? What would your message be, Natasha?
They really need to help vulnerable people out there. They just really need to get to do a reality check on people's income and expenditure.
Look at the title below here. Chancellor Rishi Sunak says, I understand anxiety about rising prices, as energy prices are set to increase by £600 by April. Rishi Sunak, who's married to the daughter of a billionaire. Rishi Sunak, who's worth about £200 million. Okay? He understands the anxiety of rising energy prices. Look, I really wish they would stop this. I really wish they would just be honest and say, I don't give a crap. Because I'd actually have more respect for Rishi Sunak if he came out and said, look, I'm okay. I don't care about these people. These people are poor. That's their fault. I'm rich. I'm happy with the situation I'm in. Why should I care about these people? I don't know them. They have no connection to me. I'd actually have more respect for him if he said that, because then he'd actually be honest. This crap, I understand anxiety about rising price. How do you understand anxiety if you're worth about £200 million? He's the Chancellor of the Exchequer. He's earning at least £150,000 a year. Please, do not gaslight. Do not lie in this way by saying that, yes, I understand the anxieties of people on universal credit. Just cut the crap. Really. Let's just park this, okay? We know you don't experience these things. We know you don't have one inkling of an idea of what it is to struggle. You never have, you never will. And that's a very important point as well. That no matter, most of us have probably gone through periods where, and I have myself, I've gone through periods where you don't know if you're going to be able to put petrol in the car. You don't know if you're going to have enough money to cover a bill. I've gone through a period. I'm very lucky at the moment because of this channel. I appreciate everyone's support and everything that you guys have really supported me over the last number of years by sharing videos and stuff like that. And I want to be honest about it. I went through a period a couple of years ago where I couldn't sleep at night because my wife and I were receiving calls from our bank to say you need to put some money in the bank because it was in the red. We were working, the company that we were working for was not paying us. They were having financial problems. That's what they were saying. And we went through a very difficult period. It was very stressful. We're very lucky now. But I understand what it was like. I'm sorry, but Rishi Sunak has no idea what it's like. He has no idea what these people are going through. And he never will. Because even if he lost his £200 million tomorrow, he would still be okay. He would not be living under a bridge. He would not be worried about paying his rent. He would not be worried about paying gas bills or anything. He's completely protected. He could ask his father-in-law for a loan of a few £100 million probably. So the idea that politicians, there are politicians who do understand this. Politicians who have grown up in poverty, who understood what it was like. They're comfortable now because they're MPs and they have a reasonable amount of money. But please point me in the direction of a Conservative MP who has struggled and understands what these people are going through. Sorry for my rant, but I think this has to be pointed out.
I mean, people who are working, again, they're probably struggling just as much as we are. So the government really need to look into it.
Okay, thank you so much for talking to us. It's giving us a real insight into how much of an impact energy price increases have already had in the last year and are going to have. And the challenge for the government is they say they want to help those most in need. And that, of course, no one would argue isn't necessary. But the scale of these price rises means that all sorts of families, all but the most affluent, are going to feel the impact of the price hikes that are coming in the spring.
The most affluent, Rishi Sunak's family, for example. Global Twig, £3,000 lunch. Yes, Liz Truss demanding a lunch of £3,000. Of course, she wasn't going to pay for it. Imagine if she had to pay for it. I think if she had to pay for it, she probably would have said, no, let's go to McDonald's or wherever. This was a lunch with American diplomats. Experiment, eat thy neighbour. Okay, just to turn up the dial a little bit on the blood pressure. Boris Johnson accused of corruption after great exhibition text emerges. So Boris Johnson has been accused of corruption after it emerged that he sought funds. And here we have once again somebody completely disconnected from reality. He sought funds for his flat refurbishment from Conservative donor while promising to consider plans for a mystery great exhibition. What the hell is this? The Prime Minister is facing fresh questions after newly published WhatsApp messages from Tory peer David Brownlow showed Johnson called his parts of the Downing Street residence a tip and asked for approvals. So his decor designer Lulu Lelt or Light or whatever could get on with it in November 2020. So if you don't remember, Boris Johnson took over number 10 and he was not very happy. Well, I don't know if Boris Johnson is a man, and most men don't really care. There are not all men, of course. Many men have a sense of taste, a sense of style. Most men do not. So I'm pretty sure Boris Johnson didn't really care. But his girlfriend certainly did care, and she wanted him to spend £750 on rolls of wallpaper per roll, not £750 for the whole wallpaper, per roll of wallpaper. And Johnson described number 10 as a tip. So tip, for people who don't know, maybe outside the UK, tip is like how can I say, a dump, or very bad, in a very bad state. It was not in a very bad state. Theresa May used to live there for a while. That was her residence for a while. Probably he didn't like the decor. It was definitely not a tip. Paul, thanks so much for that super chat. Very kind of you. The UK is inhabiting some alternative reality where the Tory MPs are photoed celebrating the food banks their policies created, and some voters think that this is somehow normal. Thanks very much, Paul. It's not even worse than normal that it's something wonderful. Look at all these new food banks. We voted for the Conservatives because they created all these food banks. People don't understand that a food bank is not a good thing. A food bank is a demonstration of government not working. I've said before, charity should not exist. Charity is a demonstration of government failure. Because if a charity exists, it means that somebody has fallen through the net. People should not fall through the net. And the Tories have punched a hole in the net. There is no net anymore. They've thrown the net in the bin. So they've allowed the public to rely completely upon charity. That's unacceptable. What is the point of having a government if it doesn't look after its citizens? What is the point of a society? What is the point in paying taxes if we don't look after each other and have a social safety net so that, none of us know what the future holds? You could be in a wonderful paying job, have an accident. It could be, you're sitting in your car at the traffic light, somebody rear ends you. You end up in hospital. You're not able to walk. You're not able to work. You lose your job. You're in a desperate situation. That's why we have a social safety net. It could happen to anyone. But the government want to take that safety net away. They want somebody else to deal with the responsibility of government. And yes, the cruel cynicism of these politicians who will go to food banks for photo opportunities. Look at me taking a selfie at the food bank. Now I'll post that on social media and it makes me look like a good person. Look at me handing out soup to some homeless people. Okay, as soon as the camera is taken away, then I wash my hands and leave. I get as far away as possible from these people because I don't associate with these people. I'm here to exploit them. I'm here to exploit the food bank, to convince the public that I care, when in reality I do not. If you notice, a lot of these photographs are taken before a general election, before a by-election. You don't see many of these people going there on a Saturday. You don't see a lot of these people don't go there unless there's a camera crew with them. That's what they're exploiting the situation. Anyway. He signed off in the message saying, P.S. On the Great Exhibition plan will revert. Lord Brownlow replied, of course, get Lulu to call me and I'll get it sorted ASAP. Thanks for thinking about GE2. On Thursday, Johnson was forced to make a humble and sincere apology from Boris Johnson for the text not being given to his independent ethics advisor during his initial inquiry last spring. So Boris Johnson apologizes for not doing something. He doesn't apologize for doing something, he apologizes for not doing something. On Thursday, Johnson was the first great exhibition was held in Hyde Park in 1851. Plans for a Great Exhibition 2.0 were discussed by Brownlow and then Culture Secretary Oliver Dowden weeks after the WhatsApp exchange, official records show. Asked what the Great Exhibition plan Johnson was referring to, his spokesperson said it was an idea that wasn't taken forward. He added that instead Festival UK, formerly known as the Festival of Brexit, would be getting the go-ahead in 2022, but could not explain the difference between the event and the Great Exhibition plan. So, Tory donors are getting involved in the Festival of Brexit. And of course, getting something in return. Look at this whole thing about Tory donors. How is this not disgusting for ordinary people? Boris Johnson has a flat. He doesn't like the flat. He gets on the phone to a donor, they give him money, and he fixes up the flat. And the donor gets something in return. And people are perfectly okay with that. Several events, including the Great Expedition 2, have been considered by the government, originally conceived by Theresa May's administration as the Festival of Brexit, then Festival 2022. The government-backed £120 million event was given the green light by Johnson and will go ahead this year under the name Unboxed. You remember that? Unboxed. Brexit Unboxed. You open it up and you find a turd inside. No, you'd actually be happy if you found a turd because it'd at least be something. Angela Rayner, Labour's deputy leader, said it appeared Brownlow had access to Johnson and Dowdell because he was paying for the refurbishments. She said, if true, it would constitute corruption, plain and simple, and added, no one should be able to buy access or exchange wallpapers for festivals. The Liberal Democrats' chief whip, Wendy Chamberlain, said, it stinks of the worst kind of conservative cronyism, with Boris Johnson seemingly happy to scratch his Lord's donors' back to get his flat spruced up in return. You know, it's the missing exchange, so seems to be the messages that were sent. Hi David, I'm afraid so this is from Boris Johnson. Hi David, I'm afraid parts of the flat are still a bit of a tip, and I'm keen to allow Lulu. Okay, P.S. The Great Exposition will revert. Afternoon, Prime Minister. I hope you're both well. Sorry for the delay. I was out for a walk and I didn't get my work phone with me. Of course, get Lulu to do okay. And then Brownlow said, finally, I should have said, as the trust isn't set up yet, will be in January. Approval is a doodle, as it's only me and I know where the money will come from. As soon as Lulu calls, I will crack on. David. Isn't it wonderful? You know, you're elected to look after the public. You're elected to represent the country, and you can, whenever you have a personal problem, you just call a donor and they'll fix it for you. Isn't that wonderful? No corruption here at all. Of course, related to this, let me read some of your comments before we continue. The poop emoji looks like more like Britain shaped, with respect you're getting there. I wouldn't call the designer that was fixing up. I wouldn't call that designer that did that. It was horrible. Lord Brown has done okay for himself. And that's the thing. And it was, I remember it was Dominic Cummings who had said, what you do is you take somebody, put them in the House of Lords, and then make them a minister. Or you take someone and send them to the House of Lords, and they'll reward you. You know, being sent to the House of Lords, I was trying to understand what's the benefit of it. It allows you to network. And it's the privilege as well. There's a huge amount of privilege. I'm a lord, you know. It's not something you can normally buy. So, you know, you donate some money to Boris Johnson, you keep him happy, and he'll put you in the House of Lords. And you can't be kicked out of the House of Lords. Notice Lord Frost resigned as minister, Brexit minister. He didn't resign from the House of Lords. Tory peer Michelle Mone secretly involved in PPE firm she referred to government. Leaked files appear to suggest that Conservative peer Michelle Mone and her husband Douglas Barrowman were secretly involved in a PPE business that was awarded more than £200 million in government contracts after she referred it to the Cabinet Office. Burman, an Isle of Man based financier. Isle of Man. Okay, we know where this is going. You know, all upstanding businesses are located in the Isle of Man. No money laundering or squirreling away money goes through the Isle of Man. May have played a central role in the business deal that enabled PPE MedPro to sell millions of masks and surgical gowns to the government at the start of the pandemic, government documents suggest. One person closely involved in PPE MedPro claimed Barrowman was part of the financial consortium that backed the company and was even involved in initial conversations with the Department of Health and Social Care. Documents seen by The Guardian suggest he and Lady Mone, why is she in the House of Lords, were kept informed of specific commercial arrangements about PPE Medrose supplies, and Mone appeared to have sent messages to an individual in PPE Medrose supply chain about the contract to supply gowns. The couple's apparent involvement in the business activities of PPE Medro, which were fast-tracked to the government's VIP lane after Mone's referral, will ignite controversy over Tory-linked firms profiting from government contracts during the pandemic. It would also raise questions about repeated attempts by Mone and Barrowman to distance themselves from PPE Medro. The identities of the people behind PPE Medro, which were awarded contracts by the government in May and June 2020, has been an enduring mystery ever since, the subject of considerable speculation. Citing confidential obligations, PPE Medro, which was set up weeks before securing lucrative government contracts. Isn't this very interesting? So there's a pandemic. Government say we need PPE. Somebody sets up a company, okay, and then they secure contracts, and these people are connected to a Tory peer. It was described as a consortium of successful entrepreneurs that comprise have financial and backed a company. It was not until November 2021, 18 months after PPE Medro won its first contract, that a Freedom of Information Act request revealed that Mon had referred the company to the Cabinet Office. So she suggested this company should be used. So she referred it to government, leading it to being processed through the high priority VIP lane for politically connected companies. Once it had become public, she had recommended PPE Medro to the Cabinet Office. Mon's lawyers said that it was after the referral, which they described as very simple, solitary, and brief step. She not to any further in respect to PPE Medro. She did not do anything further. In respect. Contacted about the Guardian's new finding, Mons lawyers said it was reporting. Its reporting was grounded entirely on supposition and speculation and not based on accuracy, and declined to provide direct responses to a series of detailed questions. You also appear to misunderstand our client's responsibilities to you. They said she's under no obligation to say anything to you. Well, she's a member of the House of Lords, and she's been paid by the taxpayer £300 a day. So I think she has a responsibility to answer questions. Look, we know what's happening here. Companies are set up. It seems this one is perhaps set up in the Isle of Man, where transparency isn't the real objective here. And it's about funneling money. Look, I don't know what happened with these. It says here, because I know there was a situation where there were gowns and masks that were supplied to the NHS that were unusable. Money was given to a company. They supplied PPE. The PPE was not acceptable, and the money was lost. QA Library, currently only 92 hereditary peers are allowed in the House of Lords. Wonder what the current governing going to do to the law. All the rest back in. It gets worse, Max. Revelation in the Guardian in the last few hours. MedPro wasn't fully set up, registered until after her recommendation. There we go. Thanks for that comment. Makes me so angry I need to go. I'm sorry, Sugar Free. But I think it's important that these issues are pointed out. It's a Ponzi, not even a Ponzi scheme. It's a scam. It's all a scam. Companies are set up. They are given priority access. The government, she sends a letter. She sends a message. She speaks to a member of the Cabinet Office. Her company is sent through this VIP lane, and government, taxpayer money is handed over to these companies, and they profit from it. And these same charlatans are the ones who will say that the NHS is on its knees, the NHS needs to be privatised. These are crooks and charlatans. Anyway, guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I just want to finish... No, I want to cover this story because this is important. On the NHS.
London Hospital, the levels of nurse vacancy rates that we have and the increasing pressures mean that currently it's a very challenging situation to work in at the moment.
And what?
Okay, so something happened with the stream. I'm not sure what happened. Can you hear me? Please tell me if you can hear me. The stream refreshed for some reason. Hope everything's okay. Crooks and charlatans is a polite way. Yes. Stream's fine here. Can hear. Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, just to refresh for some reason. Maybe the hamsters are pulling at the cables or something. Okay, let's continue with this story.
What kind of levels of absenteeism have you got currently?
Well, I mean, it's different across the capital, depending on trust, but we are seeing still significant absences due to both COVID sickness and also having to isolate, which is impacting on services across the capital, not just in hospitals, but in the community and in primary care as well.
And is this situation getting worse or is it stabilised over recent days?
Well, I think the fact that we've had to bring the army in really demonstrates the huge pressures that services are under at the moment. And my members will tell you that it doesn't feel like it's stabilising at the moment.
Nothing says the NHS is stable than bringing in the army. I think it was a government minister said the army will not be wearing their uniforms. And a member of the military was asked, will you be wearing your uniforms? And they said yes. So don't trust the government, it seems, especially when it comes to whether the army will be involved.
And at the moment, they can't see an end to it. You know, we do have nurses that are exhausted. They really are burnt out at the moment, and they're very, very stretched.
Yeah, what will the army be doing, or the armed forces, certainly the military, be doing now that they have been deployed, these 200 or so?
At the moment, the specific details around what they're going to be doing have yet to be made clear. We know that they are being deployed across the capital. We know that I think it's around 20 are going to Bart's Hospital, but their specific duties, I think, are unclear at the moment. We're being told that 40 of them are medics and will actually be able to help treat patients, and that the others will be in a more supportive capacity.
Can they do the job of absent medical staff?
I think we need to be very clear. It takes a long time to train as a nurse, and we can't just replace that with people doing tasks. And we're already.
And I think this is a very valid criticism of what's happening. Is you don't soldiers. You can't just bring them in and then they do the job that the missing staff were doing, because as she said, they have to be trained up. They don't know the hospital, they don't know the patients, they don't know the procedures, and it's not a fault of the soldiers. That's not their job. Apply this to any job that you're doing at the moment. If you're off sick and somebody was brought in off the street to do your job, it's going to take them a long time to train up to do that. And it seems that they're 9,000 short, and they're something like 200 soldiers presented by the government. So the other 8,000, what are the other soldiers doing? Are they driving heavy goods vehicles or what? It's complete shambles.
Seeing that nurses are stretched already trying to care for patients.
And of course, look, we have to bring Brexit into this. Many nurses and doctors left following Brexit. And when Boris Johnson was confronted on this, he said, we're able to fill the gaps, don't worry, we're able to deal with this problem.
This is a welcome short-term fix. It doesn't actually resolve any of the long-term issues that we have within the health service.
So a cautious welcome then?
Sorry, just see a comment by QA Library says, British Gas owner appoints Amber Rudd as director. Former Conservative Energy Secretary joins Centra board as non-executive director. That's going to really solve a lot of problems. Amber Rudd, wonderful.
It sounds the military from you, that the military are being brought in.
We're going to welcome any help that is offered, but it's obviously only a short-term fix. And we have, let's be clear, in the capital, we've got over 9,000 nurse vacancies. So 200 personnel is welcome support, but it isn't really going to fix those issues that are there.
As you've heard here, it's a 9,000 short in London. In London, I thought it was actually in the entire country. Not in London alone, 9,000 short. And this is the reason for the shortage is because many nurses are not able to work at the moment because of the pandemic, and a lot of them are burnt out. They have been working, some of them 18 hours a day, for the last 2 years. Some have taken time off. It hasn't been enough. They're stressed. They're strained. And the response from the media is they're lazy. The Daily Mail attacking the doctors and nurses. The same Daily Mail that was cheering them on back in 2020, demanding the people clap for them, is the same newspaper that is throwing them under a bus now, saying that they're lazy, that they're taking time off, that it's their fault, not the government's fault. As I said, the Daily Mail, pro-Tory, pro-Brexit, pro-Tory in this sense that it's looking after the government, protecting the government from reality. So guys, before we finish, I just want to touch on, this week is the anniversary of an event that took place last year. Very interesting event that took place last year.
We fight.
Where it was a very scary situation in Washington where a bunch of Donald Trump supporters, egged on by the former president, to basically attack the Congress building and potentially, if they could, assassinate the vice president.
We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
This is an incredibly dangerous situation.
Staff members have been told to go into their offices.
Everybody stay down. We have seen guns drawn in the House chamber.
If there was one positive that might have been taken from the sheer horror of the attack on America's Capitol last year, it was that Republicans might finally have a reason to disown Donald Trump and move on once and for all.
Look at this, these protesters are inside Statuary Hall. It's hard to believe what we're seeing right there.
But a year on, as Joe Biden chose the same hall invaded by the pro-Trump mob for his address today to the nation, the reality is that nothing has changed. Trumpism is still the dominant force in American politics.
Former President of the United States of America has created and spread a web of lies about the 2020 election. He's done so because he values power over principle and because his bruised ego matters more to him than our democracy or our Constitution. He can't accept he lost.
It was a speech Joe Biden could have made a year ago, calling out Donald Trump for his lies and still promising to restore democracy. He didn't mention him by name, but there were 16 references to the former president, something Joe Biden told us was necessary to recognize the extent, he said, of the wound.
You can't pretend. You got to face it. That's what great nations do. They face the truth, deal with it, and move on.
Mr. President, has anything changed in this country a year on? For a brief while, a year ago, it looked like the Republican Party might move on. Remember what Mr. Trump's staunchest allies said?
The president bears responsibility for Wednesday's attack on Congress.
President Trump is responsible.
Yet the majority voted not to certify Joe Biden's election, and within the month, Kevin McCarthy, the top Republican in the House, was cozying up to Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. The Republican whitewashing had begun.
Because the Republicans care nothing, they don't care about the country, they care about power, and they realize that Donald Trump, there's a possibility that he could win again in 2024. And I've said this before, people's memories are very short. By 2020, where the majority of people are disgusted with Boris Johnson, disgusted with Boris Johnson, but disgusted with Donald Trump. But people will have forgotten by 2024, by the next election, next presidential election. And there's a real chance that he could win. He'd run again and he could win. And the country is so polarized. I'm really concerned about what's going to happen. Donald Trump should be in jail for a number of reasons. Every day you hear something, oh, perhaps he's going to be in trouble now, and then it disappears. And the following week you hear another story about how Donald Trump is in trouble, and then it disappears. So I'm really hoping that he'll end up in jail. But the Republicans are not going to abandon him because they see him as valuable. They see him as something that they can use. And they understand that the country is polarized, and he's polarizing. So it doesn't serve any Republican politician's political career to go against Trumpism, because so many people within the Republican Party still think Trump should be president and will be president. A few Republicans are speaking out against Trump, but very few of them. And I think what saved the Republicans and saved America, ironically, was big business. Big business did not want chaos. They saw what happened, and I think they got on the phone to Republican politicians to disown the violence. That was it. But now that things have calmed, they're happy with the Republicans supporting Donald Trump again. But I think what happened last year really spooked the corporate America, and they saw this as something we need to rein this one in, and they got on to their lackeys, the people they donate money to in the Republican Party, and said, sort your crap out. We don't want to see the country go down the toilet because it would affect us economically. So the people who are in charge, not the politicians, but the big businesses, they were spooked perhaps by what happened. And while they're not concerned about Donald Trump running again, they are concerned about chaos. And they definitely don't want that because it affects their bottom line. If the country collapses, they're going to lose money. And they don't want that. So guys, we're almost at the end of the stream. I want to say thanks to everyone for coming on tonight. Thanks for everyone for smashing the like button. If you didn't, you can smash it now. Thanks for supporting the channel as well. Thanks for all of your super chats, greatly appreciated. And thanks to the moderators for doing a wonderful job. I try to read as many of the comments as possible, but it's not always possible to read. It's impossible to read all of them, but I read as many as I can. Wonderful. Thanks to everyone for posting. Remember, after the stream, we have our post-stream chat in the general chat on Discord. So I'm a bit tired tonight. If you're a Patreon, remember you have access to Discord, and I'll see you on Discord after the stream. But before we finish, as always, we have our one funny video for the road. So I hope you enjoy this.
Respect their decision. That's an emotional decision. That has nothing to do with clear evidence of what happened.
Exactly, Kevin. And we're not emotional about this. We're completely clear-eyed. It's just, when will this end? We're now saying to any lefty protester that they can damage property with impunity as long as they chant the phrase, hate crime. I mean, what? So we're saying a statue celebrating a slave trader is hateful now? I mean, when will it end? And this is why we need to let the government keep doing what they're doing and toppling trustees from museums who go on about Britain's sordid past instead of toppling statues. Cancel
Times
them
have changed.
and not our ancestors.
The benefit of hindsight from our position now in the 21st century, we say, well, those guys got it all wrong, which they sort of clearly did. But you can't demonise them. They're from their time. We expect them to have our sensibilities. It's ludicrous.
It is. It is. I mean, are we going to demonise men from beating their wives to a pulp? Because that's what they did back then, and then it was fine. And the women were probably annoying anyway. Are we going to demonise people for burning alive witches? No one complained about that at the time, except the witches. So
exactly.
Are we going to criticise the Victorians for child labour? No one cared about that at the time, except Charles Dickens. I mean, we've got to stop judging people from the past by the standards of today. I mean, take me. Right now, I am someone who, I find women pretty annoying. I don't like refugees. I'm just a normal person. Okay? Back in the day, who knows what I would have got along with. But I probably would have been good as well. I probably would have been a philanthropist. Well, at least my husband would have been. I'd have been waiting at home for him like a dog. But the slaves would have had it worse. So, let's not judge. I guess I'll go vandalise a Karl Marx statue. I mean, that's offensive to me. His ideology is just as offensive to me as someone who participated and benefited from the enslavement and torture and whatever of people is to a wokey snowflake. Let's judge ideas as we do actions. Well, not our ideas, because, free speech.
Sorry, got cut off there, but wonderful. Taking the piss out of Kevin O'Sullivan and Talk Radio. Wonderful. Well done, Rose. So, guys, thanks so much for coming on. Have a great weekend, and I'll see you next time. Same bad time, same bad channel on Tuesday. And as Boris Johnson always says, stay alert. So take care. See you soon. Good night.